You're listening to Bedroom Beethovens, where notable music makers break down stories accompanied by songs and melodies documenting growth through their 10,000-hour journey. And me? Well, my name is Cello, your host.
It's the Bedroom Beethoven Podcast.
Whoa, you just blew my mind because nobody talks about that shit.
Thank you for this. I was looking forward to this chat, man. I love your interviews.
I thank you for what you're doing. It's excellent, and people can continue to learn the stories of these bedroom Beethovens.
How did you find out about this? Are you? Oh my God!
Having something like this to shed light on us is amazing. We really need this documentation. So people like you are definitely needed.
Hey everybody, let's travel to the leading golf destination in the United States, to Riverside County, out in the Coachella Valley. My guest this week is...
What's up? My name's Lincoln Jesser. I produce for myself, but I've also worked with people like Terry Jr., Shafi, Yuna. I've done remixes for people like Gwen Stefani, G-Eazy, Tori Kelly, some other people like that.
A Los Angeles-based singer-songwriter, instrumentalist, and producer with a knack for pairing sunny, hook-driven electro-pop with soulful R&B, Lincoln Jesser and I sit down and talk about growing up in La Quinta, California, soaking up the sounds of Tupac, the Moody Blues, and his run-ins with Andre 3000. More importantly, as we run the gamut of his various bands and time at USC, we deep dive into the inner workings of his mind up into his latest single, Broken, which if this is any indication, it's going to be a very good year for him. BedroomBeethovens.com is the website, yo. Go to it, absorb it, clickety-clack around, and get learnt. That's also where you can shoot me an email or buy a t-shirt to rep the show. Also subscribe to the YouTube channel, or if you really want to support me, patreon.com/Bedroom Beethovens, where you can give me $1 or $2 or $5 or $10, and in return I'll shout you out on the show. I'll play your production during an episode, and I'll give you early access to the weekly episodes. It's a good time. I also want to take this time out to thank everybody who subscribed to the YouTube page or maybe follows me on Instagram or anticipates weekly episodes. I really appreciate it. A lot of time goes into the show, and I do it for the people and to document these great creative people. So thank you for sticking around week after week. Nonetheless, thanks for being here. Episode 58 with Lincoln Jesser. Let's start the show. Well, at the time of this interview, you're at 99,968 Spotify listeners. So,
Oh, damn, so close.
I want to get you.
We got to get that big 100.
Those six figures, man.
Yes.
And,
oh my God, then I'll be rich.
Well, you're a scholar and a gentleman, and thank you for being here, man.
Of course, man. Thanks for inviting me on.
So you grew up in the desert out in Cali.
I did, yeah, Coachella.
My wife lived out in Cali for a bit, so I kind of asked her about that region, and she referred to it as DHS, aka the Blight, because it is at the limit of distance for those convicted in LA and their parole. So you have like a lot of drugs, a lot of homelessness. It's a beautiful place, I'm sure.
That's true. No, that is. I mean, so there's the LA Valley, which is its own thing, but the desert kind of refers to itself as the valley too, the Coachella Valley. But yeah, there's like a bunch of different little cities within it. But yeah, DHS it gets pretty real out there for sure. That's like the high desert. I grew up a little bit more inland, like lower down into the desert, like more in the closer to Palm Springs. I actually grew up in La Quinta, which is like basically 10 minutes away from where the festival of the same name takes place, Coachella.
So is Palm Springs near the Palm Desert?
It's weird. When you're from there, you kind of just call it all the desert, but it's crazy because, everything's like 30, 40 miles away from, like the desert's like 30 or 40 miles long. So everything is actually very spread out, but it all kind of just feels like one place because there's not a lot of, when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of traffic. So it's like, the time, an LA mile versus a desert mile is a very different thing.
I also heard that in the Palm Desert area, they don't allow drive-throughs like fast food or pharmacy or anything.
Huh. That's news. I mean, maybe they definitely the area has changed quite a bit. It's evolved since I was when I was a kid, there's pictures of me on a little tricycle, and behind me it's just like sand, like desert and mountains. And now it's very, it still has a lot of that natural beauty, but it's been built up quite a bit. And I heard that the population there doubles every 7 years. So hopefully it doesn't become the next LA, but it's got something going for it.
Well, having grown up in the birthplace of the Coachella Music and Arts Festival, you must be extremely aware of what it takes to connect people through music.
My parents were crazy enough to let me start hitting that up at quite a young age. I think the first time I went, I was 12. Made a huge impact on me. And seeing all that stuff in a live setting specifically, it just takes on a whole different context. And I was the fact that you can provide that environment to people. And you also have to Coachella back then was this was pre-phones, pre-Instagram. There was no one watching. People were there to get weird. You know what I'm saying? So it was a very magical experience, especially as a young teenager. It's that will definitely make a mark on you.
Oh yeah. I go to YouTube and I look at Queen performances at Live Aid before they had cell phones. And it's just man, you look at the crowd and no one's looking down. Everyone's clapping in unison.
Right.
You don't get that anymore, man.
I mean, I don't want to, I'm not going to be that guy who's fully anti-phone or anything, it's just different. But for at that age and to have that experience, I feel very, very blessed. Yeah. It was
cool. Were your parents musical themselves?
My dad and his side were definitely musical. No one's in the business or anything, but I grew up my dad would sing harmonies to, improv harmonies to songs on the radio, and he had a cool record collection, which he gifted me quite a bit of it. And my mom always had cool music taste too. She kind of was on that 80s synth pop punk thing, and my dad was kind of in that 70s Bee Gees and disco, and they had varied music tastes. So I definitely grew up around it. My dad would play guitar for me when I was little.
So your dad didn't get tired of listening to the Moody Blues every day?
Oh, definitely not. He was a Moody Blues man for sure. You hit the nail on the head. I know you're out there somewhere.
Somewhere. I know I'll find you somehow. And somehow I'll return again to you.
Up until this point, you're in middle school and you're just like me. We're in jazz band. However, I went the nerdy route and I played trumpet while you started guitar and started a band. So you went the ladies' man route immediately.
I don't know what brought me there. I think it just felt like it made sense. I think I was already, at that time, that was right when I started falling in love with garage rock music, the Strokes, the Red Hot Chili Peppers and stuff like that. So I think it's just I gravitated towards it because I wanted to get as close to that as possible. And I had this very hip, Swedish jazz teacher who actually, I think she played saxophone, but it was a very improv based class. And she would just basically teach us a simple movement, and then we would take turns soloing. So it was a cool way to kind of get right into coming up with my own ideas and stuff like that.
But it wasn't Clapton or the Chili Peppers or Hendrix that got you in the guitar.
No.
It was Tupac.
It's true. Wow, man, you really did your research.
You never think about Tupac inspiring the next generation of guitar players. That's unique.
Well, yeah, man. I mean, it was a very specific. There's this acoustic remix of Thug's Mansion, and it was like these two like dueling acoustic guitar parts going on.
That's why we go to Thug's Mansion. That's the only place where thugs getting free, and you gotta be a G.
And I was like, damn, that is amazing. Like, I need to figure out how to do something like that. So I, that's how I learned. I just kind of like found the songs that I adored and just tried to learn how to play them. And then like that got my chops up a little. And from there, I started like, everything happened from there for sure. But I think for the first step for a lot of artists is like emulating your idols.
And you were in a band called The.
Dude, where are you finding this? That's amazing. Yeah, that was kind of just the jazz band, I think that was like our project was to create like our own little album, and somehow we ended up on the name The. I do think that was my idea because I was just like that annoying dude who like do some shit like that. But
I mean, at 14, this is when you start to become a big deal locally. You start writing your own songs, and we all know the plights of a teenager. You can write poetry, you can take boxing lessons, you can sneak alcohol from your parents' liquor cabinet, you can rebel and deal with angst any way you want. But songwriting was a natural way to process what you were going through, it seems, right?
Yeah, it was. I remember like the first time I wanted to record something was, there was this girl I was in love with madly. And so I wanted to give her a cover of Green Eyes by Coldplay. And so that was my first like foray into multi-track recording, like with the old Fostex, and you had to like export it literally by burning a CD out of the back of the machine and stuff like that. I mean, there's always some sort of reason usually, but as far as like writing my own stuff, I just started hearing things around my angsty teenage years. Yeah. And I was like, I should put this out. And I didn't really overthink it. And that was also around the time when like the MySpace music scene was kind of becoming a thing. And I'm so grateful for that, because like to this day, that was one of the coolest like music sharing communities. Like so many connections were being made between talented people, and like other people my age were like really just, it's not like people had that much to do after a day at school. They were just like kicking it at home. So it was cool that people were engaging with my early demos and something resonated. So that kind of gave me that spark to be like, oh, I should keep going with this.
And Miss Green Eyes, that was the first Jesserette, we could say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it did. It worked. So I was like, there's something to this for sure.
And then that led to Technicolor Wolves.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was, like as high school came, there was like other talented people that were also my friends, and we were like, it makes sense to jam. And we just kind of did. And I think we were like, at first we were called Hollywood Vice. And then
that's a good name.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we evolved, and we were jamming pretty hard. We did some fun little house shows and stuff, and that was kind of like the early iteration. And then probably 16 or 17, Tech Wolf started, and yeah, that was like the strongest kind of community response that I had up to that point. That we had up to that point. Like people really dug the music and like rallied around it. And it was cool for me because I was very much just like the musical portion of that, and all these kind of like other cultural elements came into play. Like, and it sort of just felt like it was like happening on its own. I wasn't like designing t-shirts or doing anything like that, but all of a sudden we had this merch, or doing these shows and doing like after parties and all this stuff. And that was the first time that I was like, wow, these songs can really like take me to new places, you know what I mean? And it's, I've never, I will totally admit I've been guilty of like trying to write songs for specific purposes, but they never turn out right. It's always like just when it comes and it's real, and that like things you never imagined could happen as a result of those songs, because they just like they resonate with people because they can feel the truth in them.
I mean, even at an early age, I mean, you guys were going to Paris and Assisi, Italy. I mean, you guys seem like a tight-knit crew.
I specifically remember this one, and we went to Switzerland at this little pub in Switzerland. That was when I fully drank the Kool-Aid and like, all right, I'm gonna be here for a couple of years. Why not?
And what was the name of the album? I don't want to butcher it. Charisma Arithmetic. That's a tongue twister.
Yes.
So after that, I mean, you take a look around now. Dan is a video director at Amazon. Andres is a senior analyst at Disney. But Lincoln, you didn't take no corporate 9-to-5. You stayed on the musical path from high school on out.
I did. I committed to the degeneracy. Yeah, I don't know. I did get pretty good grades in school. I had some other potential things that I could have gone off and done, but it just like I had a feeling that if I had done that, I would have ended up throwing it out and like coming back to music anyways. So it just was never really like a huge question in my mind. And I just wanted to be in LA. And so I came out here. I got into the music business program at USC, which was very cool. I met like some really cool people. Actually, the first day, I made this friend who was like dating a girl who was friends with the girl I was dating. He was a photographer from the Bay. And I had like one speaker in my dorm room and was like making these like crazy beats, you know? And he was like, oh, wow, this is cool. I have this peer from the Bay Area who like manages some people, and they recently moved out here. Like, I'm going to invite him over to check you out. And he did. And that ended up being Ben from Indie Pop. They became my like team for the next, like up until now, basically.
So, you know, what's crazy is like you and, Andres both went to USC. He got a master's degree in public diplomacy. You know, I wonder if he's wrestling with the same thing that you knew you were going to wrestle. Let's say you got a master's degree in basket weaving, whatever, and you were like, I got to come back to music. It's just, I wonder if they deal with that too. You know, when they're sitting in their cubicle making six figures, like, man, I really just want to play a C chord really bad.
Man, well,
but I can't.
Andres and I are still like really good friends. We actually lived together our first year out after we both graduated. We lived in Silver Lake together. All those dudes anytime we're together, it's like I'm always down to jam. So if I could ever help them, continue to keep the dream alive. But I know that they all, Dan is extremely talented musically and does his thing. And our bassist Sultan is like a doctor now, but he's like the craziest bassist ever. So all those guys are like, I don't worry about them. I know that they're being very fulfilled in what they do. So,
well, I mean, your freshman year, you get a management team. Tommy Brooksbank also went there. It just seems like it was just a giant networking, which led to your debut EP.
The thing, and like something that I continue to realize to this day is like I've become kind of a believer in a certain level of fate and predetermination. I mean, I think you have free will within that, but it's like certain things are just meant to be and are going to happen. You can kind of set your mind in the midst of that and like try to steady yourself, but it's like certain things I think are just on people's paths, and so the music kind of just came as I lived life and certain experiences happened, and that's just been my brain's way of like making sense of things or something like that. So yeah, next thing, it's like it always feels like the music just happens almost. Like I put a lot of energy into it, of course, and sometimes it's like it's a labor, but once it's done, I always struggle to remember the process of it. It's almost just like a meditative state or something.
Well, let's expand upon that. When you had Rolling Stone syndrome in high school, I'm sure you had dreams of being a rock star. And now that you're here, present day, and you cross-examine your reality today with the dreams that you had as a high school musician, maybe it was a brand new BMW. Maybe it was a line wrapped around the building of people waiting to see you. Maybe it's free wardrobes and VIP treatments when you go to a club. How accurate were your adolescent visions of your life as it is today?
That's a good question. It's kind of a mix, Obviously, I think regardless of your field, there's always the divide between expectation and reality. And like even the moments like that are the coolest perk moments, it's like in the reality of the moment, it's much more nuanced. It's not just like Nirvana, you know what I mean? But I've had some extremely cool experiences and opportunities. Like I've gotten some free stuff and I've played some amazing shows. I think I still have a lot that I'd like to do, and I think I still have room to grow, and I'm excited about that. Honestly, I enjoy the process. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned is like the secret is to take joy in the process of becoming and not overly fixate on like any fixed point. You know what I mean? Because that's just going to lead you to that's a high that's going to lead to a crash, Whereas like the creativity is forever, and the learning to be present with yourself and regardless of the situation is like forever. So I guess to answer more specifically, I think it's kind of been everything I've dreamed of as a kid so far. It's like, I mean, for me to just be able to wake up and like have the freedom to approach what inspires me in the way that I want to approach it is extremely fortunate. And yeah, I mean, at this point I can't imagine like doing anything else.
I want to touch on that too, because I'm not a big reader, but I've read The Alchemist, and I know that book inspired a little bit of your music, but I felt robbed by that ending. You didn't. I did.
Right.
What if I told you that you were duped? That research has shown that when there is an input of inspirational quotes or speeches being read, that there is a hyperactivity of stimulation in the brain, which has been linked to imagining future scenarios, and reward system feedback linked to a visual medium as well as an auditory input. So when you get inspired as a musician, your knee-jerk reaction is to write a good song, to record a good music video. It's science, It's
less about the external validation, although obviously that's always awesome. And like I've had moments of not delusions, but like visions of grandeur as far as packing out stadiums and blah, blah, blah. But like honestly, the most satisfying is always like when I just get a message, like a DM from someone, and it's like you can tell that they really connect with the music and like appreciate it and love it. And you can feel that. That's like the thing that makes me feel the best, honestly.
So your debut album, Modern Color, were you happy with the results in terms of it being your debut, your introduction to the world on a grand scale?
I was. That album was interesting because, it kind of, a lot of the album came out piece by piece. And then I sort of, at the end, packaged it as an album concept. But like for that year, I put out this track, We'll Be Fine. That was my first big internet moment. And so that did that fed my spirit. That seems to have struck a chord, and these sonics are resonating with me. I was already working on like other stuff that kind of had that same sonic imprint. And so I was like, I'm gonna pursue this and just really go hard. And I started just putting songs out, not overthinking it, no like official pathway of release, really, besides like an indie sort of strategy, just putting it on SoundCloud. And like Spotify was still becoming a thing at that point.
Were you overthinking on future projects when you started having recurring dreams? Like how you detailed how there was this house in the desert, but you couldn't go inside. Once an EP like that is out and you're able to marinate, are you able to find out what's in that house?
Yeah, I think I did finally get into that house. Like I was holding the key the whole time. You know
back to The Alchemist.
I guess that's kind of. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I mean, every girl I date makes fun of me for being woo woo. So it's
no deal. No, man. Like here's the deal. Like it would be really interesting if that dream was terrifying, and then once you put out that EP, now you look at that dream and realize it was enlightening.
I think there was an element of that. I mean, it wasn't like, I wouldn't say terror or fear was like the underlying emotion of that project, but there was kind of like a suspension feeling or a feeling of uncertainty. And I think that's kind of why I started like that project, Casa Mirage, was it involved a lot more vocal collaborations. And I hit a point where I was like, didn't lose faith in myself, but I was like, I wanted to kind of explore outside of myself as far as stories and vocal tones and stuff like that, because it's just not something that I had really done up to that point. And that was also when I started getting involved more in a writer-producer role with some other artists that I still work with and are extremely talented. So it was, I think, just a natural progression and kind of like a merging of these two different identities that I have for myself, where there's like me, who's like this, still that like 14-year-old kid in his bedroom with a 4-track recorder, like wanting to sing songs on an acoustic guitar. And then there's like the me that loves, pop music and like finds that stuff to be really fun and like likes exploring the stories of other people. And like, because combining different realities and stories that's what interests me about pop music and just more kind of collaborative songwriting, is that, two heads can a lot of times be better than one. And it's like, you can touch on things that resonate with even more people.
I think my theory is if your sleeping mind is busy pouring a foundation, putting up walls, laying tiles, painting, and hammering, it seems your subconscious is working, planning, designing, and envisioning a new reality for you. Like your psyche is moving forward with and putting into action big plans for positive change in your future. And the older I get, the more clear it becomes that your own mind is truly your greatest adversary.
100%. I think that's like something that like a universal shift in awareness is happening a little bit, because I think because of the fact that everyone can communicate more democratically, like with Twitter and all these, like there's just much more a broadened awareness of other people's realities. And we realize how much we have in common with each other. Like, I think there was maybe a level of like cultural distortion happening between different like spheres of people. And now everyone's able to see like, oh, you're coming at it from this different angle, but like you're so equally perceptive of these like base realities as me. You're just as perceptive of these basic realities as me, and they apply to like both of us so equally. And it's like, maybe that's what this is really all about.
Yeah, as I travel through your discography, I'm essentially witnessing you growing up and maturing as a person and a musician. I think with you having that dream and coming out with that EP, you realize that the vast majority of limitations in your life have in fact been placed there by you. And I think a lot of people will realize this on a surface level, but never actively work to change their mindset or way of thinking. So that's the biggest compliment I can afford to you, is I'm literally hearing growth with each project.
Man, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, that's, I would love for people to look back on that, on my catalog and say that. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Let me ask you, what is it about true happiness that can make you feel almost sad?
It kind of goes back to what I was saying about the high is, what goes up must come down. There's an element of knowing that everything is transient, everything changes, and people are afraid to embrace a moment of joy because they know or think that they know that like it's not always going to last. Everyone wants to be enlightened, but external events, of course, affect everyone's reality. We're humans, and so I think that it's just it can be kind of a heavy thing to feel pure happiness because you know that the like life is going to continue, and you're going to have to like go back to square one at some point. You're going to have to crawl your way back up.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun without being happy, and I've been happy without necessarily having fun. So you can have it all. Just don't confuse the two.
Exactly. I think it's like learning to divorce yourself from judgment as much as you can, and just experiencing and having fun with the awareness of where you're at and appreciation for the opportunity to even be there. Because like, hey, you could have been born a rock. You could have been born a car tire. Like, who knows?
Well, were old school rappers like Outkast and all that? They were an influence on you, right?
Outkast, yeah. Outkast specifically was a huge influence. One of the
They were
biggest.
big.
Andre 3K, who I've also actually Andre 3K I had one of the coolest run-ins of my life with. Which you might not know because I don't think that exists anywhere on the internet.
Well, let's hear that exclusive.
But,
is it an interesting story, or is it like he came out of the bathroom when I was going in?
No, it was I feel like it's a little more interesting than that. It's Andre 3K. How could it not be? No, but
yeah, right.
I was driving around. I was in LA, and I just for some reason I stopped at this little strip mall to grab like a bite to eat. I think it was like a sandwich place or something like that. There was a couple of little restaurants like all in the same area, but a very random strip mall. I was just kind of in the middle of nowhere. Maybe I had some time to kill or something. But so I get out, and there's like a couple of little communal seating tables out in front of all these restaurants. No one else is around. I see this like fresh looking dude, like looks kind of familiar. He's got like these crazy purple velvet shoes on. And I walked by and walked into the restaurant to order something, and then I kind of like glanced back and I saw like this little, he had like the mole, on his face, and like I was like, holy shit, that's Andre. And so, I got the food, and it was just, so I tried to be not weird about it, but like sat at a table like 2 tables away from him. So it's literally just like me and him like sitting there like eating our food. And then after like a minute or two, I was like, hey man, like I don't want to intrude, but are you Andre? And he was like,
I say hate to cut you off, but I gotta go. I wish you could tell me more, but I'm off to the studio.
I try not to gush too hard, but I let him know that I had a lot of respect for his work and everything and what he meant to me. Actually, one of the coolest takeaways I had is like, he was actually being like really hard on himself about the new stuff, just kind of saying that he wasn't like fully happy with it yet. And he was like, and that kind of just made me realize like, wow, you can be that much of a legend and still be so self-reflective. I don't know if it was like equal parts relief and terrifying to see someone of that level be so impartial towards their own work at that stage in the game. And I was just like, I mean, it just made me want to work harder and push and do something that hopefully someday he would hear and be like, damn.
That's why we were talking a little bit about your past work. I wanted to get your thoughts and feelings as you've evolved as an artist. And the new single Broken, it's heavy. It's heavy, man. I listened to it, and the commentary that is only available is you said that it helped you wake up from a vicious cycle of your own design. Why was 2019 so hard for you?
There were certain things I was hoping were going to happen with specific projects, or there was an element of like kind of losing my own voice a little bit. Not losing it because I made a ton of music throughout the year, but I kind of felt like I didn't know which direction I wanted to step in sonically and also message wise. It's hard for me to put out music, even if people seem to like it, the people in my circle who I trust, like if it just doesn't feel like, if it doesn't give me goosebumps, to think about putting it out. And like, I think something people kind of overlook these days is the quality of being able to do nothing for a certain period of time. Cause it's like, I mean, this is a tough industry to do that because attention spans are short, and it's like, people really desire that validation and feedback. So Broken, I also had kind of like a particularly volatile relationship that taught me a lot about myself, but also, kind of put me through it at times. So Broken is kind of about that, but I realized in that time that a lot of the issues that were arising from the relationship and from my feelings towards putting out new music, it was like really just, everything is everything, meaning it was a reflection of things that were going on with how I viewed myself or where I saw myself in my own development and process. And so like sometimes there's a lot of drag or resistance that happens, it's almost like a slingshot, you know? You're getting like pulled back, and then once the release happens, it's like the force propels you forward. And I think that's actually a natural part of life. The process of living broken and then creating broken was kind of like, I think it was just a lesson for me. You know, it's funny because that song is heavy, but it like that song is almost a lesson to me to like not take myself too seriously. You know what I mean? Like to have fun with it, and it's about the expression. It's about the truth telling. And like, that's what gives me the goosebumps and makes me want to put something out, is when once that happens with a song that I'm writing, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's time. Because if I feel that from a record that I do, then like chances are someone else will too.
In May of 2018, you tweeted to get out of your own way. Would you say you failed in doing that?
For a period of time, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
You mentioned that whole analysis versus paralysis thing, you know, in conjunction with you hoarding songs that never will see the light of day. Maybe this was a case of not being able to give yourself a limit, maybe being able to pick from the first 2 or 3 options you come up with and setting aside any additional options for another time. Perhaps if you can't pick between 2 or 3 things, maybe move on to just going with whatever is your first available option. Maybe the goal is to recognize that there's no such thing as the perfect choice. You need to work on being comfortable with an imperfect choice. Like maybe good enough really is good enough, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. I think you're totally right, because songs are supposed to represent, in my opinion, I mean, if you do it right, then it'll be timeless and transcend time. But like most powerful songs, they sum up a moment, or they embody a moment, or like a specific feeling at a specific point in time, you know? And can like, it's like a teleport. It can bring the listener back there, or it can like make them feel like they're being seen there, or it can provide like a specific atmosphere that is adjacent to that moment. When I was a teenager, there were so many elements of that production stuff that I didn't register to me. You know what I mean? I was just hearing the song, I was hearing the message, and like the overall energy I was feeling. And it's like you jump through all these hoops as you go on the process, and you think all these details matter, and they do to a degree. It's kind of like you need to learn the rules to break them. But you hit a certain point, and then you realize that, yeah, a lot of that is noise, and you're better off using most of your energy on the foundation, because that's like 98% of it in reality, you know? Like a great song is going to be a great song, even if it's just, you know, even without any instruments, just a voice, you know, it'll carry.
I'm glad that you're back above sea level and willing to share more of yourself with the world. And I really want to thank you for your time. I didn't want to give you a generic canned interview. I'm really grateful that you opened up about your musicality and your childhood and everything. And I do want to give you the floor now to tell everybody what's ahead in 2020.
Man, well, I just want to say thank you. I mean, that was really fun. I didn't know what to expect either, but you're a good hang. And thank you for hearing me out. It's fun to talk about this stuff, because it's what's going on in my head all day. I mean, people can expect I have a lot more new music that I'm going to be putting out, hopefully just like throughout the year. I have some stuff up my sleeve for the immediate future, so stay tuned. A lot more collabs with like the people that I work with too. I got some stuff with Terry Jr. that I'm super excited about. And yeah, just hopefully a lot more truth telling and realness, and hopefully some shows in the near future too. So nothing to announce quite yet, but definitely just stay tuned on my space, because there's going to be a lot of stuff to engage with.
You come through Austin, man. Reach out. I'm coming.
I definitely will, bro.
Cool, man. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having me.